The midday sun beats down on the asphalt outside the Crossroads Cafe, making the air shimmer above the blacktop. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of stale coffee, frying bacon, and the faint, sweet scent of bleach from the morning wipe down. A ceiling fan wobbles on its axis, stirring the warm air but offering little relief. Four men sit in a booth in the far corner, away from the windows. They are large men, draped in worn leather vests, adorned with patches that tell stories of long roads and brotherhood. A snarling wolf's head, encircled by the words Sons of Odin, is stitched onto their backs. Their presence fills the small diner, a silent weight that makes the other patrons, a handful of truckers and a family on vacation, keep their voices low. Tattoos snake up their arms, disappearing beneath the sleeves of their shirts. Chrome and steel gleam from belt buckles and the heavy rings on their fingers. The man at the head of the booth is the largest of them all, a mountain of quiet intensity. His name is Bear. He sips his black coffee, his eyes scanning the room with a practiced, unhurried calm that misses nothing. Across from him, Hawk watches the door, his gaze sharp and analytical. Next to Hawk, Grizz methodically works his way through a steak and eggs, while Snake, wiry and coiled, stirs his sugarless iced tea, the spoon clinking softly against the glass. They do not speak much, they do not have to. Years on the road together have forged a language of silence, of shared glances and subtle shifts in posture. The waitress, a young woman named Sarah, with tired eyes, moves around them carefully, refilling their coffee without being asked, her hands trembling just slightly the first time she approached their table. Now she sees only their quiet courtesy, the please and thank you spoken in low rumbles, the way they stack their plates neatly when they are finished. The peace of the diner is a fragile thing, a thin membrane of normalcy stretched over the tension their appearance creates. Then the door chimes. The membrane breaks. A little girl stands silhouetted against the blinding white sunlight of the doorway. She cannot be more than 9 years old. Her dress is smudged with dirt and has a small tear near the hem. She is barefoot, her small feet dusty and raw, but it is her eyes that stop the breath in every chest. They are a pale, milky blue, unfocused and unseeing. She is blind. Her small hands are held out in front of her, questing for information in the unfamiliar space. A whimper escapes her lips, a sound of pure, undiluted terror. The vacationing family freezes, the father putting a protective arm around his own daughter. Sarah, the waitress, stops mid-stride, a coffee pot held aloft, forgotten. The girl takes a shuffling step forward, then another. Her head turns, listening, trying to place the sounds of the room. The clink of cutlery, the low hum of the refrigerator, the creak of worn leather. That sound draws her. It is different from the others, deeper, more solid. She moves towards the corner booth, her bare feet making no sound on the worn linoleum. The Sons of Odin are perfectly still. Not a muscle moves. They watch her approach, their collective gaze a shield of focused attention. Bear sets his coffee mug down without a sound. The little girl reaches their table, her small hand brushing against the hard edge of the wood. She flinches but does not pull back. Slowly, she follows the edge of the table until her fingers find the worn denim of Bear's jeans, then his arm resting on the seat. Her touch is as light as a moth's wing. She finds his hand, a massive, calloused thing scarred by tools and asphalt. Her small, cold fingers wrap around one of his. Bear does not move. He lets her explore the terrain of his knuckles, the thick ring on his finger. He feels the tremor that runs through her entire body. She leans in close, so close he can feel her faint, ragged breath against his cheek. Her lips are almost against his ear, but she says nothing. Instead, she lifts her other hand and, with a terrifying, deliberate slowness, places her index finger on the back of his hand. She begins to trace a letter, a T, then an R, an A. Finally, a P, trap. The word burns itself into his skin, a silent scream that echoes louder than any sound. Bear's eyes narrow, the calm in them hardening into something cold and dangerous. He gently covers her small hand with his own, a silent promise of protection. The diner door chimes again. A man steps inside, blinking as his eyes adjust to the dim light. He is the picture of respectability. A tailored gray suit, perfectly knotted tie, polished leather shoes. His hair is silver at the temples, and his smile is warm, reassuring, and completely false. There you are, Lily, he says, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. You gave me quite a scare. The girl, Lily, flinches violently at the sound of his voice, pressing herself closer to the unmovable bulk of Bear. The man walks towards them, his smile never wavering. I am so terribly sorry for the disturbance, he says, addressing the room at large. Lily has such a vivid imagination. Sometimes she gets frightened and wanders off. He stops at their booth, his gaze falling on Bear's hand covering Lily's. His smile tightens almost imperceptibly at the corners. Thank you for finding her, he says, his tone condescending as if speaking to a simple-minded child. We can take it from here. He reaches for Lily's arm. Come along, dear. Let's not bother these gentlemen. Bear does not move his hand. He does not look at the man. His eyes are on the terrified child beside him. She seems bothered enough already, Bear says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. The man's smile falters for a fraction of a second. He forces a chuckle. She has these episodes, he explains, his voice oozing with false sympathy. It's part of her condition. She gets confused, lost in her own little world. I'm her counselor, Mr. Sterling. I'm trained to handle this. Counselor, Hawk repeats from across the table, the word flat and toneless. Not her father? Mr. Sterling's eyes flicker towards Hawk. No, her parents passed. I'm her state-appointed guardian and therapist. It's a complicated situation, a private family matter. He tries to assert his authority, to wrap the situation in jargon and officialdom that usually makes people back down. He underestimates his audience. You said counselor, Bear states, his voice still quiet, yet it cuts through the man's smooth words like a razor. Now you say guardian. Which is it? Mr. Sterling's polished facade begins to show the faintest of cracks. It's both, of course, he says, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice. The roles are intertwined in a case like this. Now, if you'll please release her, we need to be going. He reaches for Lily again, more forcefully this time. Before his fingers can touch her, Grizz's arm, thick as a telephone pole, moves with surprising speed, blocking his path. Grizz doesn't say a word, he just looks at him. That is enough. Mr. Sterling pulls his hand back as if burned. Now see here, he sputters, his voice rising. I don't know who you think you are, but you are interfering with a legal guardianship. I will call the police. Go ahead, Snake says, his voice a soft hiss. He gestures to the phone on the wall behind the counter. Be our guest. Panic flashes in Mr. Sterling's eyes, a brief, telling flare of fear before he masks it again with indignation. He knows he cannot call the police, and now they know it too. The midpoint has been crossed. Suspicion has hardened into certainty. These men are no longer observers. They are protectors. Bear leans down, his voice softening as he speaks to the trembling girl. Lily, he whispers, is there someone else we can call? Someone you trust? Lily hesitates, her small body racked with fear. She is terrified of Mr. Sterling, but she is also in a room full of strangers who smell of leather and motor oil, whose voices are like rocks tumbling downhill. But the hand holding hers is warm and steady. It feels safe. She leans in again, her whisper so faint it is barely a breath. Mr. Davies, she breathes. My grandfather. Okay, Lily, Bear says, his voice a soothing balm. Okay, where can we find Mr. Davies? Her next words are rushed, desperate, a secret she has been holding on to like a lifeline. The old cannery, she whispers urgently. By the river. He's in the room with the blue door. Unit 42. The detail is sharp, specific, verifiable. It is the key. Hawk pulls out his phone. Mr. Sterling sees the movement and takes a step back, his face paling. This is ridiculous, he says, his voice strained. She's delusional. There is no cannery. Her grandfather is in a nursing facility 2 states away. She's making it all up. Hawk ignores him. He looks at Sarah, the waitress, who has been watching the entire exchange with wide, fearful eyes. "What's the name of this town?" Hawk asks her quietly. "Harmony Creek," she whispers, her voice barely audible. Hawk's thumb moves across the screen. He doesn't look for a number for the cannery. He already has the number he needs on speed dial. He presses the phone to his ear, his back to Sterling. "Miller," he says into the phone. "It's Hawk." A pause. "Yeah, we're good. Listen, I need a favor. Harmony Creek. Is there an old cannery by the river?" Mr. Sterling's composure is unraveling completely. Sweat beads on his forehead. "You have no right," he shouts, his voice cracking. "She is my patient. I am responsible for her. You are kidnapping a child." "Quiet," Bear says. It is not a shout. It is a command, and it carries the absolute weight of authority. Mr. Sterling falls silent, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Hawk listens to the phone, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, that's what I thought," he says. He nods slowly. "Run a name for me." "Sterling. First name probably fake. Claims to be a guardian for a blind girl named Lily. Grandfather is Davies." At the mention of his name, Sterling makes a choked sound. The mask is not just slipping, it is shattering. The polished, respectable professional is gone, replaced by a cornered animal with frantic, darting eyes. He looks at the door, then at the bikers blocking his path. There is no escape. Hawk listens for another 30 seconds. "Got it," he says, and hangs up. He turns around, his eyes locking onto Sterling's. "The cannery exists," Hawk says, his voice cold and flat. "It's been converted into storage units." He takes a step towards Sterling. "Funny thing, though, the local sheriff's office got a call about an hour ago from an old man named Davies. Said his granddaughter Lily was taken from his yard by a man pretending to be from social services. Every word is a hammer blow, dismantling Sterling's lies one by one. He also said the man locked him in his own home before he left. Took him a while to get to a neighbor's to call for help." Sterling shakes his head, mumbling, "No, lies. She's confused. The name you gave was Sterling." Hawk continues, relentless. "Detective Miller ran it. Turns out there's a Martin Sterling with a warrant out for fraud. Matches your description perfectly. A disgraced therapist who preys on vulnerable families. The truth hangs in the air, thick and poisonous. The diner is utterly silent, save for the wobbling ceiling fan and Sterling's ragged breathing. His eyes, wild with panic, dart to Lily. He makes his final desperate move. He lunges, not for the door, but for the girl. A guttural snarl rips from his throat as he tries to grab her, to reclaim his prize, his leverage. He never gets close. Grizz moves with a speed that seems impossible for a man his size. He doesn't throw a punch. He doesn't need to. He simply steps into Sterling's path, a solid wall of muscle and bone. Sterling collides with him and crumples to the floor as if he has run into a brick building. He gasps for air, stunned and defeated. Snake steps forward and places a heavy boot gently but firmly on the man's back, pinning him to the floor. The diner door opens again. A man in a rumpled suit stands there, flanked by two uniformed deputies. Detective Miller. His eyes take in the scene in an instant, the man on the floor, the bikers forming a protective wall, and the small, blind girl clinging to the hand of their leader. He nods once at Hawk. "Thanks for the call," he says, his voice weary but professional. The deputies move in, hauling Sterling to his feet and cuffing him. The disgraced counselor doesn't resist. He just babbles, a torrent of pathetic excuses and threats of lawsuits, his words holding no power now. As they lead him away, Bear kneels down in front of Lily. He is careful to move slowly, not to frighten her. He takes her other hand, holding both of them securely in his. "It's over now, Lily," he says, his voice a soft rumble. "He's gone. He can't hurt you any more." For the first time, the terror in her begins to recede, replaced by a wave of shuddering relief. Tears well up in her unseeing eyes and stream down her dusty cheeks. They are not tears of fear anymore. They are tears of release. You're safe, Bear says, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely shows. You are safe now. You're with us. You're one of ours. She leans forward and puts her head against his leather vest, her small body shaking with sobs. Bear wraps one massive arm around her, holding her gently, a guardian bear protecting his cub. The other patrons in the diner watch, their initial fear of the bikers transformed into silent, stunned respect. Sarah, the waitress, has tears streaming down her own face. A short while later, an elderly man with frantic, loving eyes rushes into the diner. Lily, he cries out. Grandpa! Lily's head shoots up and she turns towards the familiar voice. Bear releases her and she stumbles towards her grandfather, who catches her in a fierce, desperate hug. He holds her, stroking her hair, whispering her name over and over again. Detective Miller explains the full situation. Sterling, whose real name was Martin Klein, had been tracking the family for weeks, learning their routine, waiting for a moment to strike. The old cannery was indeed his hideout, a place where he likely intended to hold the girl for ransom. Lily's bravery, her silent signal, had saved not only herself, but her grandfather as well. Mr. Davies, his eyes overflowing with gratitude, turns to Bear and the other sons of Odin. How can I ever... How can I thank you? He asks, his voice choked with emotion. You saved her life. You saved my life. Bear shakes his head, uncomfortable with the praise. We didn't do anything, he says, his gaze on Lily. She's the brave one. She saved herself. We just listened. He looks at the other men, who nod in agreement. They refuse any offer of reward, any payment. Their code is absolute. They do not accept money for protecting the innocent. It is not a job. It is a duty. They quietly pay for their meals and walk out of the diner, the bell chiming softly behind them. They mount their iron horses, the engines roaring to life with a sound like thunder rolling across the plains. As they pull out onto the highway, Bear glances in his side mirror, catching a final glimpse of the little girl standing safely in the arms of her grandfather on the diner steps. The memory of a small finger tracing the word "trap" on his hand is a brand he will carry forever. A reaffirmation of their purpose, their code, their reason for writing. 1 year passes. The seasons turn. The sons of Odin are in their clubhouse, a converted warehouse that smells of oil, steel, and old leather. A package arrives addressed simply to Bear, Sons of Odin. There is no return address. He opens it carefully. Inside, nestled in a bed of tissue paper, is a small wooden carving of a bear standing on its hind legs, its posture protective, watchful. The carving is simple, almost childlike, but rendered with incredible care. Beneath it is a thick piece of cardstock with raised dots and a regular typed letter. Bear picks up the letter first. It's from Mr. Davies. He writes that Lily is doing well. She's in therapy, learning to work through the trauma, but her spirit remains unbroken. She has started taking riding lessons at a stable for disabled children. She loves the horses, the feeling of freedom and strength. She is not afraid anymore. The letter explains that the other paper is a note from Lily herself, written in Braille. Mr. Davies has provided the translation. Bear reads her words. Dear Bear, thank you for listening when I couldn't speak. Grandpa says you are my guardian angel. I think you are my guardian bear. I made this for you. I call him guardian, so you don't forget me. Bear picks up the small wooden carving. It is smooth and warm in his large hand. He runs a thumb over the carefully carved wood, feeling the intent, the gratitude, the courage of the little girl who made it. He closes his hand around it, the small carving a solid weight in his palm, a reminder, a talisman. Hawk looks over his shoulder, reading the letter. A rare, small smile touches his lips. Kid's got talent, he says. Bear nods, his throat too tight to speak. He carefully wraps the wooden bear in a soft cloth and places it in the inside pocket of his leather vest, right over his heart. It will ride with him always. A few hours later, the sons of Odin are back on the road. The sun is setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The roar of their engines is a single, unified heartbeat. They ride on towards the darkening horizon. They do not know what lies down the road. They only know that as long as there are wolves in the world, there must also be guardians. And as long as there are whispers for help, they will be there to listen. They ride on, a line of dark knights on iron steeds, forever bound by their code, forever watching, forever ready.